Rachel, you've got the first question, I think.
We do. It's from Mihal, who asks, what happens to Angela Rayner if Labour wins the next election? Since the traditional second-in-command spot will likely be occupied by Rachel Reeves, is there an obvious different place in the cabinet where Angela Rayner might end up?
It's interesting because you wrote a piece, actually, and if any of our listeners missed it, they should go back and have a look at it, about how she's actually been frozen out by Keir Starmer's inner circle lately. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you found there before we answer the question?
Well, it's certainly what's felt by some of the people around Angela Rayner is that she's kind of being sidelined in some respects, and I think there's some frustration with that. I think everyone will kind of remember way back in the wake of the Hartlepool by-election, Keir Starmer embarked on what was widely seen as a botched reshuffle of his front bench.
Are there two more depressing words in the English language than botched reshuffle?
No, and
it's a bad day at work.
Yeah, I think he tried to change Angela Rayner's position from campaign coordinator into to give her another role, and it seems there was a great deal of pushback on that, and the outcome ultimately was that she came out with about 3 or 4 different jobs. So she shadows the Cabinet Office Minister, she's Deputy Leader, she's Shadow First Secretary of State, and she also is Shadow Secretary of State for the Future of Work, which Boris Johnson joked about at the time because future of work being like future of potentially leader of the Labour Party rather than just deputy. But I think over time, she's got a lot of roles, and when it's come to Labour setting out its missions for government, which would be potentially like cross-government work, which Angela Rayner would take care of as the cabinet office person. She apparently has not been in all of those meetings and is not across all of it, which has led to a lot of questions about, would she instead have some kind of policy brief? She's previously been Shadow Education Secretary, but, maybe it might be something like a culture kind of brief, or, because I think there's a lot of expectations that the Labour leader at some point before the next election will again reshuffle his front bench and hopefully not botch it this time. But Angela has quite a unique role in the Labour Party in that she's directly elected as deputy leader, so it's very difficult to move her or to put her into a different role. And I think a lot of people around Angela and those who are not necessarily her political allies would recognise that she's very appealing to some voters, but perhaps not every voter in every part of the country. So, what kind of campaigning role she'd have in the run-up to the election would kind of be a key question. But I think everyone kind of has come to see Rachel Reeves as a kind of de facto deputy. But I don't know how Keir Starmer would move Angela Rayner if they were in government. Not least because she's very good at the dispatch box as well. So. Why wouldn't you want Angela Rayner doing deputising PMQs while Keir Starmer's not there?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think something that whenever you speak to Labour politicians, particularly from the last Labour administration, they often talk about the sort of very handy dynamic that they had with Tony Blair and John Prescott. And I know Angela Rayner has compared herself to John Prescott in the past.
Yeah, and the kind of the two politicians like balance the ticket, don't they? So that it's like, like you've got the sort of London lawyer, very technocratic, seen as reliable, reassuring for people. And then you have Angela Rayner, who's kind of like dynamic northern woman, plain speaking. Yeah. So they do balance the ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting looking back at how this situation has developed in the past. As you say, we had Prescott there, and Brown was actually obviously closer and more powerful to Blair. And then similarly, we had Nick Clegg fulfil the sort of deputy prime ministerial role, and then George Osborne, who was actually more powerful in practice. So I don't think you'd necessarily have to move away from where we are at the moment with Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer basically, being closer and also having probably more power, but Angela Rayner fulfilling that deputy leadership role. But also she is Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. So she's basically shadowing Michael Gove at the moment. So it is quite a Oliver Dowden at the moment, I think. Sorry, yes.
Yes.
Just changed. Yeah, so she is shadowing Oliver Dowden at the moment. And that is quite a powerful position to be in, the Cabinet Office. You're basically running the Cabinet Office in effect, and you also are often turned to by Prime Ministers to sort problems out, to bring Whitehall departments together. And then in addition to that, she's got, as you said, Rachel, this position as the future of work. And we mentioned yesterday about how key the future of work and the labour market reforms that Labour wants to bring about will be to their platform, and they've said they want to achieve many of them in the first 100 days. There's lots of legislation there, there's lots of Whitehall responsibility there, and there's lots of campaigning and House of Commons performances that will be required.
Yeah. I think like the Cabinet Office role opposite Oliver Dowden is, I nearly said Michael Gove there. The Cabinet Office role opposite Oliver Dowden is very technical. And, bitty, cross-government, and, there are a lot of people who feel a better role for Angela might be having a policy brief where she can communicate with the public more directly about Labour values and use her kind of high public profile to give it a better use, basically.
Because in government it is more of a technical role than a campaigning role, and I think she'd probably be more fitted to the latter just because she comes across on media and at the dispatch box quite well, or at least even if you don't like her kind of personality or style of politics, it's compelling to watch. Whereas the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster role, which actually, when I was at the COVID inquiry earlier this week, Oliver Letwin, who used to hold that role, was there, and he was explaining exactly what that role is. And he said it's a kind of Mr. Fix-It, jack of all trades. He was the one who was supposed to be Minister for Resilience, which is why he was in front of the committee and in front of the inquiry. And he said that, he had to have a good relationship with different parts of government and be the one who was sort of slowly doing the unglamorous stuff behind the scenes. And I'm not sure necessarily if that's the best use of her talents anyway. So it may not be a sidelining, it may just be a refining sort of what she's best suited to.
Yeah, and it might be it might be the Keir Starmer wants to put someone with a real zeal for reform of government, of how government works in that role. But I think to kind of show the other side of that coin, there is some frustration from people around Angela that the achievements that have been made by the Shadow Cabinet Office team while she's been in post, she hasn't really got credit for. So some of the big successes they've had in criticising how the government handled PPE during COVID, kind of Angela wasn't necessarily credited with kind of with landing some of those arguments, which
because every time there's been a sleaze scandal, she has been the one to respond.
Yes, that's right. But I think it's felt by some of the people around her that the credit for that kind of gets absorbed more generally and not given to Angela.
Thanks to everyone who submitted questions. We do read them all, so please keep sending them in. If you'd like to send us a question, just go to newstatesman.com/youaskus. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment under the video. Thanks so much for watching. We'd love to know what you think. Please make sure you leave your comments below. And if you enjoyed watching this podcast, you can watch more of our videos on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to like and subscribe.